different mechanisms. Obviously, no one's tested that. It's interesting you bring it up this way because it makes me think of David Jenkins and the Portfolio Diet. It actually made the New York Times. I think in December.
I'm not familiar.
November. The Portfolio Diet was a diet he designed for maximal cholesterol reduction. So it was initially designed to have 4 specific foods. So it was high in soy protein, nuts, plant sterols, and soluble fiber.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one to get past most of the American public. I'll tell you, as a public health educator, I don't care if it comes out in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New Yorker, and everything in between. People hear soy.
Yeah.
Nuts they like, but easy to overeat. They hear plant sterols, and like they're someplace else.
This diet went on a head-to-head comparison with lipid-lowering agent, right? Like a statin.
Like a statin.
Yeah. They had the same cholesterol reduction as a statin.
As a statin.
Yeah.
The Portfolio. Interesting name. People are definitely unhealthy in this country, and if they can lower blood lipids.
Yeah. They've expanded it to be more flexible. So it's not just soy protein now. It also includes legumes. They've added monounsaturated fats, so olive oil.
When I look at a diet like the Portfolio Diet, which I only know what you just told me about it, or I think about the current food suggestions by the FDA, which are, we could call it kind of, it emphasizes unprocessed and minimally processed food. So I think that's a step in the right direction, certainly. When we look at these, the issue that always comes up for me is I think, okay, in a more plant-based, grain-heavy nut diet, it's very easy for people to overeat calories based on this whole like amino acid protein foraging hypothesis. This idea that we eat until we get enough of the amino acids we want, like a chicken breast or something, and a couple eggs or 4 eggs or something is very satiating. Whereas we can eat a lot of grains and nuts before we kind of go, okay, that's enough. There seems to be this issue, like how do you ensure cardiometabolic health while quelling hunger? I mean, you can't have people walking around hungry all the time. And the GLPs help with that. And it does get down to sort of like, do you include animal-based foods or not often? So how do you think, just from a public health perspective, that we can reconcile this? Because clearly the highly processed food diet is not going to work. The standard American diet, I think that is fading away. But now there's this kind of polarization of like, are we going to go mostly plants, grains, nuts, and kind of think low saturated fat, blood lipids improving? Or are we going to think like, more protein, satiety? Do you see where I'm getting at here? Like, I feel like this is the contour of things.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's no reason to pit one another against the other, right? So like this one-on-one. But what's important is that also having a diet that's more plant-based, has higher volume, that's filling. It's hard to eat a lot of food. So if your food volume is high but does not provide as much calories, you'll get that satiety from the food volume. And then you put in some nuts, helps to prolong this satiety because then you get some protein, some healthful fats. And so I think that's important. I'm not saying animal products are bad. I think they're important for a diet. I think they're important for health. It's just a matter of portion size and making sure that there's not overemphasis on animal products over plant-based products, because we know that plant-based products are so much healthier in terms of heart health, reduction of type 2 diabetes, cancer risk, and other metabolic diseases.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you. I love fruits and vegetables. I'm a huge fan of, I do eat meat, half Argentine. I mean, and chicken, and I'm not a big fan of fish. I keep working on this, but can't seem to quite get there. But I don't eat them in excess. The things that I feel are very, very easy for people to overeat are starch fat or starch sugar fat combinations. It's just the brain and gut respond with signals that scream more.
Right.
It's very hard for people to do like a slice of pizza. I love pizza. It can be done, but it's just very hard for people to do. It's like the stop signals just are all pushed down, and the go signals are all go.
So reducing white foods as much as possible is what
White foods?
Yeah. So the white flour, white rice, white pasta, white, things that are not as colorful. If you're eating a slice of bread and it just dissolves in your mouth,
it's sugar.
It's not so good.
This is more of an editorial reflection again, but it's also, I was looking at the history of nutrition in this country. You're Canadian by birth, right? I detected that. Right? And I don't know what the sort of traditional fare is in Canada, but if you look at the history of food in the United States, it's never been particularly healthy. The foods that we consider like American foods, like hamburgers, hot dogs, french fries, corn dogs, fried chicken, donuts, like we've never been healthy about food. People probably just moved a lot, ate less, smoked a lot more, which is an appetite suppressant, but gives you cancer, kills you. We've never been that healthy with respect to food. Maybe food volume was more in check, but if you look at traditional food in Europe, probably in Canada, what sort of are the foods nourishing and healthy? I think we're sort of in this like delusion that like we were once healthy about food in this country. We were never healthy about food. The food was always pretty weak in terms of nutritional status, except for fruits, vegetables, and some animal products.
Yeah. I think portion size has a lot to do with it too. So I know moving from Canada to the US, go to a restaurant, the portion sizes are so big. It would never have occurred to me to take home doggy bag at a restaurant ever. And then here it's like kind of have to, or else, you're throwing away half your plate, or unless you're finishing the whole thing. So portion size, I think, is a big one. And also the foods are different in a way. We were talking about yogurt. So there are two things. When I moved to the US, the first thing the dietitian at my work told me was, do not buy bagged bread. I was like, okay, what does that mean? Don't buy bagged bread. That's what I always do. No, she says, you go to the grocery store, you go to the bakery section, they'll cut it up for you. You ask what you want. Don't buy bagged bread. Like, okay, I'm not going to buy bagged bread. So apparently she was talking about like too many additives, too much sugar, whatever. Okay. We're talking about like the bread that just melts in your mouth. So, and then the other thing was yogurt. I eat yogurt quite a bit. And then the yogurt here in the US tasted sweeter to me. The same thing, the same yogurt. Canada, here, the same name, the same everything. It was sweeter. And I didn't know why, but then it occurred to me that, foods are formulated in different ways in different countries to appeal to the population of that country. So yogurt was one where it's a little less sweet in Canada than in the US, and it was less sweet even than in Europe than Canada and US. So there's things like that don't necessarily help.
Yeah. Yeah, we love our sugars and fats in the United States. And I think we paid a substantial health debt as a consequence. I mean, now, again, I don't have the numbers on this, but with retatrutide and the other GLPs, I've never tried them, but a lot of people are finding it much easier, if not easy, to lose weight that they just couldn't before. They just could not control their appetite. And they're just not as interested in these foods. There's this argument that maybe they're not as interested in everything in life. And that's an important question that needs to be resolved.
But I do think that things are changing. I think we're finding a lot more, for example, the yogurt, right? There was a lot more plain yogurt options than there were, when I first moved to the US. So there's,
things are changing. There's been a lot of resistance. And I think that the resistance has been sociological in the sense that, there's been a resistance to people being healthy. There really has. There's this idea that like if you're eating clean, you have an eating disorder. I did an episode about eating disorders. I talked to a lot of experts in this, including the group at Columbia Med that works on eating disorders. The frequency of anorexia, the most deadly psychiatric illness of all of the psychiatric illnesses, hadn't realized that, is not increasing as a function of social media or magazines or anything. It's been very steady for maybe hundreds of years. This is a real neurological issue. There's obviously social pressures and things like that, but what I discovered in like talking to experts like Joanna Steinberg at at Columbia and others, is that, like there is this, so that was about anorexia, but what I'm about to say is separate. There's this notion that if you're going to be thoughtful about what you eat, or maybe you're not going to eat too late, or you're going to skip dessert, or until a few years ago, like if you're not going to drink alcohol, like there's something wrong with you. Like that you're being restrictive somehow. I think, again, it's kind of like the parallels to Europe are kind of interesting, or the contrasts to Europe are interesting, where there's a lot of social convention built up around food that was healthy. And I think in the United States, the social conventions built up around food and alcohol were pretty unhealthy. It was like, everyone does this. Like everyone eats hot dogs at the game. And hot dogs at a baseball game are a great thing. It's like nothing is as American as that, except maybe apple pie, right? But there's this, when people start making choices in the direction of their health, it was, and to some extent it still is, there's this quieter undercurrent of, well, like, are you being restrictive? Like, are you really going to live like that? But then you look at the health outcomes. And culturally, until a few years ago, it was considered very not okay to say that obesity was a health risk. And now the open discussion about obesity and metabolic health as like a real health risk. I think now we're kind of like in the actual discussion that for a long time it was like, Speaking of which, and kind of things outside the box, there's a paper on your CV that I could not help but ask about. Snack chips fried in corn oil alleviate cardiovascular risk factors when substituted for low-fat and high-fat snacks.
Yep.
What? What?
Yes.
Tell me the data. I believe you. I'm just like, what? This is wild.
This was funded by Frito-Lay. At that time, they had changed the oil that they were using to fry their corn chips. So this was Doritos, Fritos, Cheetos, and Tostitos. It was all the toast. Yeah.
All the Eatos.
All the Eatos. And so they had changed to corn oil. They're like, this is an oil that's higher in polyunsaturated fats than what we usually have.
What were they using before?
I'm not sure. I forget.
But it wasn't tallow.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Like, does it make a difference? Is it going to improve health if people choose those snacks compared to other snacks? So we had 3 arms in that study. Each person went through each of the 3 arms. It was for 25 days. The question was, okay, let's say you have a choice for a snack today, and you're going to go to the vending machine, and you have your option to eat a low-fat, high-carbohydrate snack, a high-fat, high-saturated snack, or those chips. So you just pick one, and that's that. So I think it was 2 snacks a day for 25 days. It was a rotation. So they had 4 different chips. So it was 2 one day, 2 the next day, like that for 25 days, and then the controls. And yeah, the better lipid profile was the one from the corn chips. They had the better lipids, yeah. And they had less lipoprotein little a, which is another factor, cardiometabolic risk factor.
Data are data.
Data are data.
Well, I know that in the head-to-head comparison of seed oils, of which corn is, right, with saturated fat, this is where kind of the contention starts to erupt, where there are many studies now, I think, showing that when you substitute saturated fat with seed oils, that cardiometabolic risk factors go down. And this is true, right? Yep. Well, by the way, I'm just going to say I avoid seed oils actively because I like olive oil and butter, mostly olive oil. I avoid seed oils. I don't like the way they taste. I love olive oil. Okay. And there's some health effects of olive oil. Yeah. And I eat small amounts of butter. And so I just like duck the whole controversy, right? And you have to make sure you're getting real olive oil, but that can be done. When you look at the studies that compare saturated fat to seed oils, you do see better outcomes for seed oils. But then there's this crowd that comes in and says, but that's on a backdrop of reasonably high carbohydrate intake. When you start replacing some of those carbohydrates with lower carbohydrate diet, increasing protein intake, so not keto, but kind of like lower-ish starch and sugar, then maybe that balances out. Okay. But the big contention seems to be around the processing of these seed oils. This idea that especially when you make things like chips, that when you take fats and you combine them with carbohydrate and you heat them up a lot, that you create factors that are not good for the body. What is the evidence for or against that?
Well, so different oils have different smoke points, right? So each oil should be used for its appropriate usage, right? So cooking process. So I think that's where, people think that they should be using one type of oil for everything that they do. But some oil, like you wouldn't put flaxseed oil, for example, and heat it up to very high temperature.
Are you a fan of flaxseed oil?
I'm a fan of every liquid oil. I have no personal
You seem very healthy.
Restriction on the types of oils. I think that oils that remain liquid at room temperature, that should be your barometer for what's better to use. I'm also not saying that people should avoid butter like the plague, right? So all in moderation is okay.
Is there any reason I just can't find the argument for why anyone would replace olive oil with a seed oil.
Olive oil has a lower smoke point than other seed oils. So peanut oil, for example, has a higher smoke point. So you can fry in peanut oil. You wouldn't fry anything in olive oil.
I wouldn't eat anything fried.
Well,
yeah.
So that's a different question. But so depending on how you want to use your oil, then also some people find olive oil in baked goods might impart stronger taste. So depending on the type, so some of them are more flavorful, right? And so they're more fragile, let's say, and they'll impart flavors to different foods where they're not supposed to be.
So you're not seed oil averse, nor are you pro seed oil, is what I'm hearing.
Personally?
Yeah.
No.
Because I think that the seed oil debate has been very contaminated by the issues that I mentioned before, but also because many, many processed foods contain seed oil. They're much less expensive than using, grass-fed butter or olive oil or even just ordinary butter. So
it's important to be nutrition facts literate. So when you're talking about processed foods, so as much as possible, cooking at home, but that's something that a lot of people don't really know how to do, feel they don't have the time for.
People aren't going to start doing that.
And then
I'll tell you, they're not going to start doing that. And then I wish they would, but they're not going to.
At the grocery store, to look at the nutrition facts panel and being like, okay, what's in here, what's in there, and comparing products to one another, right? And also what's more important for your own health. Right? What's relevant for my health may not be what's relevant for your health. Some people we're talking about salt sensitivity. Some people are very salt sensitive. Some people are very active and need to replace salt. And so salt is not an issue for them. But so being able to know what to pay attention to, because otherwise it just gets overwhelming.
You mentioned the study was paid for by a company, and earlier you mentioned companies. I think this is